Megyn Kelly, who is, oh my God, Megyn Kelly's getting crap for another issue, which I'll discuss in the Epstein story. But Megyn Kelly did say some things here about Charlie Kirk before he passed, gave a little bit more information about what happened at that Turning Point USA event that Tucker Carlson spoke at, which apparently pissed off some donors that were donating to Turning Point USA. And I think you guys need to hear this. Let me go ahead and bring this in.
On the subject of Charlie, I think people who didn't know him may be misunderstanding Charlie. Like Charlie, he was important. He was hugely important to the conservative movement, but he didn't do it by discouraging debate or trying to tell one faction they couldn't or shouldn't say something, or not saber rattling on something that was like a sacred cow of the administration's. He didn't always do it, but he wanted those discussions to happen. I don't think Charlie would be upset about the debate that's generally happening between, say, Tucker and Ben Shapiro right now in Israel. He would not like how nasty it's getting. You know, he definitely would not support calls to have Tucker, you know, people to stop watching Tucker. Ben's not asking for him to be deplatformed, but clearly he wants him cut out of polite conservative movement circles. He would not be in favor of that. He knew what Tucker was saying, including about Israel, and continued to invite him to Turning Point events. And so I just wanted to tell this story because I think people are misunderstanding. Like Charlie was all for really robust discussions of very tough issues, including Israel and beyond. It's just he wouldn't necessarily lead them because he did have donors and he also was very close with the administration. And so I just wanted to say two things. Number one,
let's pause here for just a second. So Megyn Kelly has been moving in different kind of ways. Like she's coming forward a little bit more here with some information about Charlie Kirk. You're also going to see a video of what happened backstage at that Turning Point USA event. So this is kind of, I guess, her way of pushing back on people like Ben Shapiro, and Mark Levin, who are calling for basically the silencing of Tucker Carlson. They want him to be muted. They want Nick Fuentes to also just lose his voice. And I continue to say this: you don't have to agree with what they say, but I always get very, very ticked off when people start calling for other people to be deplatformed, to be silenced. I have a problem with that. She is telling you that Charlie Kirk would have never moved in that direction. One of the things we can say that we do know is that Charlie Kirk did have debates with people on all different sides, whether he agreed with them or not. He brought people together to debate on different issues. I don't think that Charlie Kirk, if he was alive today, would say, okay, Tucker Carlson, you should be deplatformed. Nick Fuentes, you should be deplatformed. You should not have a voice. And I think this is part of the reason why Ben Shapiro is losing followers, bleeding followers right now. Let's continue.
There was a Turning Point event last July, and many of us were there, and we all saw Charlie. And that was an appearance at which I spent all my time talking about Epstein. It was right after the whole debacle with Pam Bondi promising she's got the file on her desk and she's going to reveal it, and then releasing that 2-page memo saying, oh, there's absolutely nothing to talk about. I don't know what you're referring to with those Fox News hits. You know, they memory hold them. And the FBI got swooped up into it, and it was very controversial. And that is what my appearance was. Not a speech, it was a Q&A. And that is what Charlie wanted to talk about. And backstage, he made very clear to me that he wanted to focus in on Pam Bondi and encouraged me to really go for her. Now, I didn't.
That part to me was interesting. Focusing on Pam Bondi, going in on Pam Bondi, right? Miss Pam Bondi, who said, oh, we got these Epstein files and we have all these videos and we're ready to go. So that part there, I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't hear about that before. that tells you that Charlie Kirk also had some issues with Pam Bondi. And I also believe, like looking back, like here's the thing. Some of the people who are like jumped on this pro-Israel train and some of these influencers that are getting that $7,000 per post, as we talked about on the show, also people like Tim Pool, who's jumped on the pro-Israel train and stuff like that. I really do believe that behind the scenes, these people know damn well that they're telling you a lie. I really do believe that behind the scenes, if I were a fly on that wall, they're probably having these conversations off camera at how disappointed they are with the Trump administration, how frustrated they are about Pam Bondi and the Epstein files. But when they get on camera, they're not going to say that because their job is to keep you where you are. Their job is to keep you asleep.
I don't need Charlie's direction because I'd been going for her on my show. So it's not like this was orchestrated. He had been listening to my show and he was basically like, please say all of that right here. And that's fine. I'm like, you're leading the Q&A. Let's do this, which is what happened. So Charlie was not at all averse to seeing Pam Bondi take a hit. He was just too polite to be the one personally to do it himself. So, but he knew that the administration wasn't going to like that. And he was not shy about that. He thought that was an important issue. And who was really hot on that issue in particular? Well, Republicans, yes. And young Republicans too, who smelled a rat and just felt like, do we have the same thing with this administration as we've had with other administrations, red or blue, where, important people get protected and only people with no connections are left to fry. So anyway, that was one example. And the second example also relates partially to Epstein and partially to Israel and involves Tucker. So 2 weeks after Charlie died, Tucker had me on a live broadcast he did of his own show. It was on a Wednesday night, and it was about free speech. It was about a lot of things and definitely touched on Charlie too. And he and I had a long talk that night. It was actually a great show. Here is Tucker describing his discussion behind the scenes with Charlie. Now, before I play this, Tucker would come under withering criticism for what he said at the Turning Point event. He did criticize Israel. He also suggested he thought that Epstein was a Mossad spy, something I speculated could be true in my own remarks too. I mean, I had no idea, and I made that clear, but to me at the time, it made sense. We've since had many discussions about whether it does make sense. Alan Dershowitz, who represented Epstein, has said Epstein denied that to him directly, and Alan would have used that if he could have to get him off. Ehud Barak has said it wasn't true, and he used to run the IDF in addition to Israel, but he was also extremely close with Epstein. So take it for what it's worth.
He also sexually assaulted Virginia Giuffre, which she wrote about in her book that was just published. Barak, former prime minister of Israel.
Okay. Tucker got criticized by the pro-Israel crowd for his remarks at the Turning Point event. Charlie also had threats from donors thereafter saying, if you don't get rid of Tucker Carlson, like, we're done. And he had received some threats about that even before Tucker's appearance. And he said, well, I'm bringing him anyway. And that's all been documented. This is kind of water under the bridge, but I'm showing it to you for a different purpose. Tucker on that broadcast said the following about his backstage conversations with Charlie before he went out there.
Before that speech that I gave in July, we had a conversation about this backstage right before I went on. And I was fulminating and getting all red in the face like I often do to my shame. And I was mad thinking about this and thinking about the effort by the neocons in the United States to draw us in to another forever war with Iran. Not a defense of Iran, of course. It's merely an acknowledgement that we've done this before. This happened in Iraq, which we entered into at the behest of those same foreign policy strategists, and it didn't work. And so I was going on at some length backstage with Charlie, and I said, probably not going to talk about that. I'm not going to torture you. I know your donors hate this when I say that. And also Epstein was in the news, and it was clear to me that, Epstein's probably not like a Mossad agent or something, but Epstein clearly had contact with Israeli intelligence and American intelligence and French intelligence, but the only one you're not allowed to talk about is Israeli intelligence. But it seemed true to me, and I had done some work on that. I knew a bunch of people pretty close to that story. So So I thought that. And I said that to Charlie. And I said, but I'm not going to say that because I don't want to make your donors mad. I know it's just going to be like an endless flurry of text telling you to stop or you're going to lose a bunch of funding. And he looked at me, I'll never forget it, and said, go all the way. Do it. Go all the way. I said, man, a lot of things I can talk about. I don't need to talk about that. And he said, do it. So I did it.
So that's interesting. He wanted him to talk about it. And maybe at that point in time, this is something to think about. Maybe at that point in time, he kind of looked at it as though, Tucker, you can say things about this right now that I can't say. Or maybe that he wanted to say, but he knew what would happen if he did. Wait till you see the Backstage clip here.
And here's the thing, Stu. I was recently going through some old pictures to find one of me and Charlie that I knew we took at that event. And not only did I find pictures of me and Charlie, but I found a video of me, Tucker, and Charlie speaking backstage right before Tucker went out. Tucker and I were talking. Charlie came over and interrupted for just a second. And you can hear him on this tape, which I've listened to many times. It's very clear on my phone, less clear here probably as we play it. But he says to Tucker, go Max. He interrupts the conversation because he has to say to Tucker something. And what was so important to him to tell Tucker was, go Max. Here it is.
Go Max. Come on.
So that part right there. So again, this is that infamous Turning Point USA event that Tucker Carlson spoke at and obviously pissed off some donors. They didn't want him there to begin with in the first place. And then when you look back at what he was saying, he was talking about economic issues. He brought up Jeffrey Epstein, which look at where we are with that today. He brought up all of these different things. And that was like a no-no to the donors, to the donor class that were contributing to Turning Point USA. But what she's showing you here in this video is that backstage, he was telling him, go Max. So he wanted him to go all in. And that makes me wonder if he wanted Tucker Carlson to say the things that he knew that he probably could not say. Remember, Charlie Kirk in this conversation of Turning Point USA at this event, Charlie Kirk was a moderator, right? So other people came out and they spoke. There were also like conversations that happened back and forth. I think this may have been the same one Dave Smith was at. I'm not entirely sure. But he was the mod. He wasn't the one that was, necessarily doing the debating. And so it just makes me wonder, all the people who are saying, like Ben Shapiro and all of them saying like the things that Candace Owens is saying isn't true. She's been able to debunk that. Someone sent this to me. She showed on her cell phone because they said those text messages that she showed people weren't real. So then she showed the messages on her cell phone. So they're really striking out here. They just keep striking out back and forth. And now you're seeing here, he told him to go Max. He knew what he was going to talk about. He knew what he wanted him to talk about. So why would you tell someone to go Max if you didn't want them to say what they were going to say?
It's quick. It just happens to be on tape. And it backs up what Tucker said. And so I just think we need to be realistic. Charlie understood what was happening to the conservative movement over Israel. He probably understood it better than any of us because he absolutely loved Israel. And yet he represented and was of young people. He was young. That was his constituency. That's where he spent all of his time. And he knew that even on the right side of the aisle, they had turned and were turning on Israel. And knowing all of that, he told Tucker to go out there and do all the things Tucker did. Go Max, he said. Now, why did he do that? Because he knew there was a faction within the conservative movement that needed a voice. They needed somebody to put their thoughts and their complaints and their objections into words in a public setting and not just cede the whole argument to the other side, which has been dominating conservative thought and media forever, the Mark Levins of the world. And so it's one of the many reasons why I really object to this attempt to otherize, snuff out the voice of Tucker Carlson. Charlie knew exactly where Tucker stood on these issues and wanted him, and I quote, to go max.
So that part right there. So this idea that, oh, well, maybe he did not know, and what they're saying about Charlie Kirk moving in that way, shape, or form before he was killed is not true. But as time has gone by, we've seen more and more receipts, more evidence to show, he wasn't happy with the donors. The text messages that showed that he wanted to walk away from all of that, walk away from Israel and all that kind of stuff. So that stuff was there. And the thing is this, if we did not have the receipts, let's say Candace never kept those text messages. Just think about this for a second, because I want to show you how people can get played. Let's pretend Candace never kept those text messages. Let's say she deleted them. Let's say Megyn Kelly doesn't have this backstage photo video. Let's pretend none of those things happen. Then it's just their word against like Candace and Megyn and Tucker Carlson. Without the receipts, you don't really have this. And Turning Point USA, they look really bad right now. And the way that they're trying to run cover, just listen to what the FBI said. That's fine. Ben Shapiro, Mr. Protect the Children, and Epstein Files guy, the moment that Donald Trump said, nothing to see here, no files, Ben Shapiro gets on his podcast and says, well, Trump said that there's nothing there, so nothing to see here, folks. And that's what all of them apparently were supposed to do. But you have, again, like I said, this segment now that is not willing to do that. And that's a problem for Trump. That's a problem for Israel. That's a problem for the donor class. That is a problem for the Republican Party. We're going a little bit more here.
The answer to what is happening right now on the conservative half of the aisle is not to silence Tucker, to diminish him to the point where he doesn't have followers. Not that that's possible, you lunatics. Or to try to delegitimize Tucker. If anything, Tucker is a remaining voice for Charlie, whose views were changing himself. So I have nothing against Ben saying all the things he feels, or more neo-Connie people feeling that, or pro-Israel people saying all. I think they should say that, and I understand perfectly where they're coming from. But there is another reasoned, passionate point of view, and Tucker represents that. And that's what he's been doing on his show. It rubbed some people the wrong way, but it didn't rub Charlie the wrong way. In fact, he wanted more of it.
So that was interesting to see. And here's something else that kind of goes along with that. Just telling you about the lies that have been going on from Turning Point USA. Listen to what Candace said here. She debunked 10 lies. Watch this.
So they're allowed to lie. No, that's ridiculous. We will not be following that. Here's our list. And this is by no means definitive. Okay. Just getting this together briefly. They told us these lies. The amazing, heroic, magnificent Mikey McCoy had blood all over him. That's a lie told by Pastor Rob McCoy. Charlie was a committed evangelical who only liked Catholic architecture. That's a lie told and reinforced by Alex Clark and Andrew Colvett. Lie number 3 is that Charlie's neck stopped a 30-06 bullet because Charlie ate salad. He had strong bones. It was a modern day Christian miracle. That's a lie. The offender is Andrew Colvett. Another lie. Charlie never blinked in his support for Israel. Offender Josh Hammer, Bibi Netanyahu, insert Zionist here, many Zionist, Christian Zionist influencers as well. That turned out to be a big lie, an unnecessary lie. Lie number 5, the magnificent Mikey McCoy called his dad first. That's a lie. Rob McCoy told that lie. Number 6 is Terrell, the AV guy, was told to remove the cameras by police. That's not true. I have every second of his moves. That offender would be Tyler Boyer. Okay. He lied. Number 7, Terrell moved the SD cards because people were stealing hats. Question mark, Andrew Colvett. What if you were scared about people stealing? Maybe remove the cameras?
I also didn't see that in the video. I didn't see people stealing hats in the video, but
Very expensive cameras would be the thing that they would steal. What are they going to do with your SD card? They're going to resell that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Those are pretty cheap, right? Lie number 8, Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk never had any bad blood between them. The offender there was Alex Clark. Ben Shapiro was on her show, and I don't know why she tried that little bit of propaganda when she knew that wasn't factually true. 9, Charlie established Doge, and that wasn't unusual. Turning Point financially audits the company every year since its inception. Lie. Doge was entirely different from the apparatus of financially auditing yourself, which is recommended and actually in some states required for a company that size. That's 501c3. And 10, like I said, this is by no means a definitive list. Mikey McCoy was a hero that day. Now, you could say that's subjective, but I feel like that, like, objectively, to be a hero, you can't just make quick phone calls. I don't know. I not include 911 in that list. So I'm going to put that on our list of lies.
so there's a lot of things going on at Turning Point USA. I thought it was interesting to see that backstage footage that Megan did show there. And again, it's just, I swear to God, every time TPUSA says something, trying to push back on either it's the receipts that Candace has, or either it's just pushing back on people who are suspicious that what the FBI said isn't real. They just keep getting exposed. Andrew Colvett, Ben Shapiro, all of them, they just keep getting exposed. It's not looking too good for them right now. It's really not. And I don't know if this is a meet me outside moment, but I will say this. Notice that they are avoiding them, right? So Candace put a call out and said, you guys can come onto the show and we'll have this conversation. They're not interested, apparently, right? Megyn Kelly would probably also have the conversation. She sat down across from Ben Shapiro recently at an event along with Tucker Carlson. They were on stage. You guys remember this? So we talked about that as well. But it just seems like they're avoiding the people who have a lot of receipts. They're avoiding Candace Owens. They're avoiding Tucker Carlson. Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson were at the same event. They both talked to Megyn Kelly, but not together. So something's going on here, folks, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know, man. I don't know. Again, 2025 has been a crazy year. And when I said like 2025 was going to be live, I didn't think it was going to be this live. But here we go. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.